I'll do a little pre-story. So I've introduced Keanu a lot of times. I've known him for about 20 years now. And I love this topic, the myth of annexation, because I believed in that myth when I first met Keanu. And so you're going to go through that same presentation I did. At the time, though, I was a cocky indigenous politics person. I actually helped develop the master's degree program in indigenous politics at Manoa in the political science department. And so I was set up to go and try to sit in Keanu's presentation and try to poke holes in it. And I was sitting in the front row, and I'd never seen his presentation before, and I thought I knew my stuff. And I did. I just knew my stuff. I knew the myth of annexation. And my jaw was on the floor after that first presentation, and I had nothing but questions after that. And so the people that tried to set us up were really disappointed. So you're gonna have the pleasure today of going through the myth of annexation. If you haven't seen this material before, watch it again and again and again. Dave Fry, our tech guy, is recording this. Thank you, Dave. And I'm sure we'll have a way of getting it out to the public. Anytime you get a chance to see Keanu do this presentation and other related presentations, do so. Highly recommended. We have, here at this college, adopted the non-myth story of the fact of American military occupation here and the so-called annexation, which is still being pushed. Present day, you can get on the U.S. Archives website, and it'll still tell you about annexation today. And it's still what people are trained in all over the United States. So this is an important presentation. I'm really happy to bring up our first guest, but I'm going to read the formal who Keanu is for the record and for anybody here who doesn't know him. So we're fortunate to have Dr. Keanu Sai here. He's a lecturer in political science and Hawaiian studies at this college, yeah, and also at the University of Hawaii at Manoa College of Education Graduate Division. Dr. Sai received his PhD in political science from the University of Hawaii in Manoa, specializing in international relations and law. Oh, and that's the end of it. The third page. My formal reading of it. Sorry, Keanu. Without further ado, Dr. Keanu Sai.
Well, hello everyone. Yes, so Kalawai and I are really good friends, and he's also the editor of the Hawaiian Journal of Law and Politics. So it came out with its 5th edition, and is it up on Hawaiian Online yet, the 5th edition? Volume 5? Okay. So Hawaiian Online is a very well-known publicist of legal material, and the Hawaiian Journal of Law and Politics is up there. So that's really good. So again, my name is Keanu. It's good to be back here on campus because I teach online classes. I actually live on the Big Island, yeah. And but I have the privilege of flying when I need to. So what I'm going to talk to you about is the myth of annexation. All right. Now, when people see that term annexation or to annex, it's actually an outcome. To annex is an outcome, right? Cession is a transfer, right? A transfer that creates the outcome of annexed territory. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, and you're going to see that when we go through this. So I'm a stickler for terminology. Terminology is very important because especially during this time of unraveling the lies that has been perpetuated for over a century, you have to stick to the terms because terms have definitions and definitions have consequences, right? So that's important. All right, so the myth of annexation celebrating Hawaiian independence because November 28th is Independence Day, national holiday in the Hawaiian Kingdom. So the British connection, right? On February 25th, 1794, Hawaii became a British protectorate by agreement between Captain Vancouver and King Kamehameha I, and the British ensign was the flag of Hawaii. In 1816, Kamehameha I ordered the formation of the Hawaiian flag that became the national flag of the Hawaiian Kingdom. So that's why the Union Jack is here, right? It's not that we're a colony, we're actually a protectorate. Something very similar to Tonga, before Tonga became an independent state. Now, in 1843, November 28th, which is that day of independence, both Great Britain and France jointly recognized the Hawaiian Kingdom as an independent state at the Court of London. Okay? And that was followed the following year by the United States. President John Tyler recognized the Hawaiian Kingdom and its independence. Now, this term independent is important. So you have what is called states, which are like a commonwealth, where you have defined borders, centralized government, and people in it, right? But to be an independent state is to be where your laws and your policies exist over your territory independent of other places. So if you have a duality of laws within a state, that state is not independent, okay? So today you have California, right? It's a state, but you have two legal systems in California. You got those laws enacted by the legislature of California, but then you also have laws from the federal government enacted by the Congress in Washington, D.C., right? Now, in 1783, when Great Britain lost the war and signed a treaty of peace, he actually recognized the former 13 colonies as 13 independent states, right? So Pennsylvania, Georgia, right, Massachusetts, they were independent, meaning only their laws applied over their territory. But in 1789, those entities, independent states, chose to give up their independence into a federal government, which is through the federalist system, right? And that's what created the duality of laws within the states, but yet the United States as a whole is independent. Am I making sense? Okay. But the Hawaiian Kingdom is an independent state, meaning only Hawaiian law applies over Hawaiian territory. By 1893, the Hawaiian Kingdom maintained over 90 embassies and consulates throughout the world. So these are some of the letterheads that are from the archives. Now, the Hawaiian Kingdom, along with the United States, was one of only 44 independent states in the 19th century. The Hawaiian Kingdom's government was a progressive constitutional monarchy and a recognized neutral state by treaty, along with Belgium, Luxembourg, and Switzerland. Now, neutral states are important because under international law, countries can go to war, which is the ultimate dispute resolution. And those rules is what we call today international humanitarian law, or the laws of war, right? Once you have countries at war, the neutral countries maintain their positions of not being biased. But their ports are also open for warring factions to come in to refurbish, but they got to disarm, and then leave, rearm, and they go back fighting. The Hawaiian Kingdom was actually part of the development of neutrality in the 19th century. The Hawaiian Kingdom's literacy was second to Scotland. And Aboriginal Hawaiians, notice I said Aboriginal, not indigenous Hawaiians, because the term indigenous peoples refer to non-state nations, but rather tribal nations that exist within a state, like Navajo, Choctaw, Maori, right? Maori, New Zealand is the state, but they have a separate status as a tribe, right? Drawn from the Treaty of Waitangi, okay? Now, because the Hawaiian Kingdom is an independent state, you don't refer to the people in the Hawaiian Kingdom as indigenous people, right? Because you can't be a tribal nation in your own country. So what they refer to in English is Aboriginal Hawaiian, which is first to arrive, right? Whether pure or part. So Bernice Pauahi's will in 1884, Article 13, when she established the Kamehameha schools, it says financial aid will be given to those Hawaiians of Aboriginal blood, pure or part, right? That means you got Hawaiians, not Aboriginal. Pure or part. Pure Kanaka, Kanaka Maoli, part Hapa, right? Am I making sense? Yes. Okay. Yes.
Hawaii Kingdom still a state, still exists. Is it also a neutral state because of what happens? Are we considered a neutral state?
Yeah, so neutrality is evidenced by a treaty and also the policy of a country, right? So like in the case of Belgium, Luxembourg, and Switzerland, they weren't actually neutral by choice. They were neutralized by the warring powers in Europe. They were created to be the buffers. The Hawaiian Kingdom took the policy and was proactive. Let's utilize our position in the middle of the Pacific, knowing the strategic location. So it's a way of, to me, I think it's a good konane move. Yeah. Now, the Hawaiian Kingdom's literacy was second to Scotland, and Aboriginal Hawaiians throughout the islands received universal health care at no cost since 1859 at Queen's Hospital. The Hawaiian Kingdom extended its territory beyond the 8 major islands by colonizing the Northwest Islands under the doctrine of discovery. Now I'm going to be speaking to you folks as a state, right? So what are the rules that apply to states? Well, according to Judge Greenwood, traditional international law was based upon a rigid distinction between the state of peace and a state of war. Countries are either in a state of peace or a state of war. There was no middle ground. And acts of war committed by troops of a state against another state is what triggers a state of war. So my background is not just political science. I served 10 years in the Army. I was a field artillery officer. So I completely understand the rules of warfare, right? Hague and Geneva Conventions, FM 27-10, FM 27-5. Now, state of war includes military occupation. Now, on January 16th, 1893, the Hawaiian Kingdom was invaded by United States Marines and its government overthrown and replaced by a puppet government the following day, calling itself the Provisional Government. Queen Liliuokalani conditionally surrendered to the United States and called upon the president to investigate the actions taken by U.S. troops and the American ambassador. She did not surrender to the Provisional Government because what you have here is a difference between wannabe revolutionists that are trying to change the government, which is an internal issue, as opposed to an invasion by a foreign country, that's an act of war. That's completely different. Now, by direction of Queen Liliuokalani, President Cleveland on March 11, 1893, initiated a presidential investigation into the overthrow of the Hawaiian government. On December 18, 1893, 11 months after the overthrow, the president reported to the Congress his findings and conclusions of the investigation. He stated to the Congress that on the 16th day of January, 1893, between 4 and 5 o'clock in the afternoon, a detachment of Marines from the United States steamer Boston with 2 pieces of artillery landed in Honolulu. The men, upwards of 160 in all, were supplied with double cartridge belts filled with ammunition and with haversacks and canteens, and were accompanied by a hospital corps with stretchers and medical supplies. He concluded that this military demonstration upon the soil of Honolulu was of itself an act of war. Now, as a political scientist, that just triggered state of war. Okay? And the president of the United States acknowledged that. He acknowledged what the Queen surrendered to. Now, he also stated that by an act of war, with the participation of a diplomatic representative of the United States and without authority of Congress, the government of a feeble but friendly and confiding people has been overthrown. He also concluded that the Provisional Government owes its existence to an armed invasion by the United States. These acts of war committed by the United States began the military occupation of the Hawaiian Kingdom on January 17, 1893. Now, customary international law in 1893 obligated the United States as the occupier to administer the laws of the Hawaiian Kingdom and not the laws of the United States when they are in effective control of the territory. This was exactly what happened in Iraq in 2003 when U.S. military overthrew Saddam Hussein's government. They became the Coalition Provisional Authority that continued to administer Iraqi law because Iraq was still independent despite its government being overthrown. Can you folks see the significance of that? That's what international law provides. Now, this obligation is now codified under Article 43 of the 1907 Hague Regulations and Article 64 of the 1949 Fourth Geneva Convention. Now, in 1824, the United States Supreme Court in American Insurance Company versus Cantor stated that the holding of conquered territory as mere military occupation until its fate shall be determined at a treaty of peace. If it be ceded by the treaty or transferred, The acquisition is confirmed, and the ceded territory becomes a part of the nation to which it is annexed. Can you see how they say ceded is the first step, outcome annexed? But you need a treaty. The treaty of cession of transfer. Once complete, annexed territory. In order for the United States to claim sovereignty over the Hawaiian Islands, there needs to be a treaty with the Hawaiian Kingdom where it transferred its territory and sovereignty to the United States. Now, under international law, the military overthrow of a country's government does not affect the continued existence of the state with its independence and sovereignty. According to Professor Brownlee, after the defeat of Nazi Germany in the Second World War, the four major Allied powers assumed supreme power in Germany. The legal competence of the German state, its independence and sovereignty, did not, however, disappear. What occurred is akin to legal representation or agency of necessity. That's the administration of German law. The German state continued to exist, and indeed the legal basis of the occupation depended on its existence. The very considerable derogation of sovereignty or authority involved in the assumption of powers of government by foreign states without the consent of Germany did not constitute a transfer of sovereignty. So in order to find that the sovereignty of the Hawaiian Kingdom was transferred, you got to find the consent. It's called a treaty. Okay. So distinguishing the state from the government. Here we have the Hawaiian State, 1843. That's why November 28th is celebration of independence, right? That's the national holiday. Hawaiian Kingdom government exercised that authority. That government was illegally overthrown in 1893, but most important, the country still exists. Why don't we know that? Everybody in Europe knew what happened during World War II, but we're going to get into it. Now, President McKinley succeeds President Cleveland on March 4th, 1897. While still in a state of war with the Hawaiian Kingdom, the United States attempts to acquire the Hawaiian Islands by a treaty of cession, with their puppet government now calling themselves the Republic of Hawaii. Okay. Now remember, this puppet government, Cleveland said, owes its existence to an armed invasion. Remember, that's the genealogy of this puppet. Now, according to Professor Oppenheim, a leading expert in international law, cession of state territory is the transfer of sovereignty over state territory by the owner state to another state. And the only form in which a cession can be effected is an agreement embodied in a treaty between the ceding and the acquiring state. So here we have two sovereign entities represented by their governments, sovereign states. One government will cede territory to the other, negotiating during peacetime or as a result of war. So here's the United States. East Coast, former colonies of the British, became independent states. How did the United States get all of that? Treaties of cession. First one, 1803, Louisiana Purchase from France. Okay, that was negotiated during peacetime. And we're going to get there. Followed up by 1819, the Spanish Treaty, ceding what we know today as Florida. Pacific Northwest from the British. 1867, Alaska, Russia. And then during war, as a result of war, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, which transferred all territory north of the Rio Grande. But once the Rio Grande starts to go north, then it's boundary, right, to the west coast of the United States.
So when did our session occur with the United States? We never have one session. We never
Well,
session with
as a result of history, I can say we don't have one, but what you're seeing here is an attempt to get one by a treaty. But the treaty is with the insurgents, which is their puppet. It's like, I'm talking to my hand. You know, puppets work. That's why it's called a puppet government. Yeah.
So that, because without, you cannot get one treaty without session, right?
Yeah. No. A treaty is the process by which you cede territory, which will eventually become annexed territory.
Okay, but we never even do that.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, Kanani, it's coming up in class.
Yeah.
We're not there yet. Hawaii law. Hawaiian Studies 255. Almost there, Kanani. So he's jumping ahead of the syllabus in his class, in his presentation. Oh, sorry. Okay. So here we have a protest against the treaty, right? And this was called for by Queen Lili'uokalani while she was in Washington, D.C., okay? And two organizations, Hui Kalai Aina, the Hawaiian Political Association, and the Hui Aloha Aina, Hawaiian Patriotic League, went on and got signature petitions. Hui Kalai Aina, 17,000. Hui Aloha Aina, 21,000, okay? But they decided in Washington to only submit the 21,000 signatures because the Hui Kalai Aina 17,000 signature petition was also saying, restore the queen. This one is just protesting annexation, period, in any way, shape, or form. So they were still playing politics at that level, but what they wanted to do was to actually use this to get senators who openly said they're going to ratify, because you needed 60 votes at that time of the senators, and they're going to chisel it down where they can't get it. Okay? And it worked. By March of 1898, they killed the treaty. That is cool. That means they weren't just sitting down, and they were playing the American game, right? The American political process, and they were able to kill it. So the Hawaiian Islands remained an independent state, but you can see an attempt was made to acquire, right? Now, on April 21st, just a month after the treaty was dead, in 1898, the United States declares war against the Kingdom of Spain and fights the Spanish in both the Caribbean and the Pacific Ocean. On May 1st, U.S. troops invade the Spanish colonies of the Philippines and Guam, because they're also fighting in Puerto Rico and Cuba in the Caribbean. Just 3 days later, on May 4th, 1898, House Representative Francis Newlands from Nevada submits a House Resolution number 259 purporting to annex the Hawaiian Islands, and he submits it to the House Committee on Foreign Affairs. A resolution is not a treaty. It's a congressional act or a process to eventually lead to a joint resolution, right, which is an American law, which is limited to U.S. territory. Remember the word independence? American laws, because U.S. is independent, can only apply over its territory. Hawaiian Kingdom, only Hawaiian law. Mexico, only Mexican law. Canada, only Canadian law. So now they're trying to say they can annex a foreign country by passing a law because they want Pearl Harbor. They want to develop it. Now, Representative Thomas Ball, when it was reported out of the House Committee on Foreign Affairs up for debate, now he's from Texas. Everybody says Texas was annexed by a joint resolution. No, it wasn't. Texas was annexed by the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo in 1848. It was the joint resolution of annexation that was passed by the Congress that actually triggered the Mexican-American War, right? Now, he goes ahead and he says this on the record: the annexation of Hawaii by joint resolution is unconstitutional, unnecessary, and unwise. That territory could only be constitutionally acquired by a treaty. Now, it is coming straight from the guy from Texas. And Senator Augustus Bacon from Georgia stated that the annexation of foreign territory was necessarily and essentially the subject matter of a treaty, and that it could not be accomplished legally and constitutionally by a statute or a joint resolution. Clearly, they understand what's going on back then. How come we don't know this stuff? Unless you took my class.
Is this documented somewhere, these conversations?
Yep, congressional records. That's the greatest thing. Everything I'm using is from the records. It was actually part of my doctoral dissertation. Yeah. So nobody can say I'm making this stuff up. Now, Senator William Allen from Nebraska pretty much lays it out. He says the Constitution and the statutes are territorial in their operation. That is, they cannot have any binding force or operation beyond the territorial limits of the government in which they are promulgated. In other words, the Constitution and statutes cannot reach across the territorial boundaries of the United States into the territorial domain of another government and affect that government or persons or property therein. We teach this in American politics. You know, poli-sci, what is it, 130. And he also stated that the joint resolution is ipso facto null and void, meaning it's not even an argument. This thing is just void. And here's Washington, D.C., where Congress is at. You got boundaries. U.S. laws are limited to those boundaries. Now, according to the U.S. Supreme Court with regard to U.S. laws, it says the laws of no nation, not just America, can justly extend beyond its own territories. They cannot have any force to control the sovereignty of any other nation. Again, speaking to the meaning of independence, right? And in 1936, the court reiterated that neither the federal constitution nor the congressional laws passed in pursuance of it have any force in foreign territory, and operations of the nation in such territory must be governed by treaties, international understandings and compacts, and the principles of international law. What you might say is we've been trying to, in the past, explain a football game using baseball rules. And all I brought to the equation of this football game are football rules. And all of a sudden, wow, I see it. So that's when people go from, wow, OMG, oh my God, WTF. Been there, done that. I was in Army. Oh, wrong Army. According to the Handbook of Humanitarian Law in Armed Conflicts, says the international law of belligerent occupation must therefore be understood as meaning that the occupying power is not sovereign, but exercises provisional and temporary control over foreign territory. The legal situation of the territory can be altered only through a peace treaty. International law does not permit annexation of territory of another state. Again, chipping away at the myth by me just showing you the truth, or should I say the facts. Because, sometimes you tell somebody one person's truth, there's another person's lie. Just stick to the facts then. I don't care what you believe. Bottom line is there is no treaty between the Hawaiian Kingdom and the United States. I actually tried to find it. Oh, wait a minute, I found it. William McKinley statue, McKinley High School. He's holding in his hand, it says Treaty of Annexation. I'm not even lying. That's what it says. It was dedicated by Sanford Dole. Yeah. McKinley High School. McKinley High School, before 1907, was actually Honolulu High School. 1907, they changed it to President William McKinley High School. They dedicated the statue in 1911, and if you go there, he's holding a rolled up document, and if you look real close, it says Treaty of Annexation. Nope, aole, no treaty. How come he didn't put joint resolution of annexation? Because it can't annex anything. Yes.
I went to McKinley,
Okay.
and only seniors can go on campus after you graduate. So I looked at it. I went home, my grandma's pure Hawaiian, and I asked my grandma, what is this? She goes, never mind. It's all lies. Yeah. I was like, what? Yeah. And I go, so explain, you're not going to understand. Yeah. Just go with the job. And only seniors can go on campus. You cannot go on it, there's a test, get the grass, right? Yeah. So sophomores and juniors, you cannot, only after you graduate. So I wanted to know,
I actually went there and climbed up and took a picture. Actually, I asked the security guard. This was in 1997. And I click. Because I was on a radio show with Keomi Keokui. We had a talk show called Perspective. He and I. And we'd bring up these issues. And he's a McKinley grad, so he told me all those stories. And I said, you even know what a Treaty of Annexation is? Nope. But there's a reason why we don't know, right? So what I'm doing is I'm laying out the development of the myth and then the myth busting, all right? So, newspaper article, October 20th, 1900, Maui News. The editor writes, Thomas Clark, a candidate for territorial senator from Maui, holds that it was an unconstitutional proceeding on the part of the United States to annex the islands without a treaty. You see how the language, the use of the term of treaty is being used on both sides, not just in America, but also here. And that as a matter of fact, the islands are not annexed, according to Clark, and cannot be. And that if the Democrats come into power, they will show the thing up in its true light and demonstrate that the islands are de facto independent at the present time. That's 1900. This is 7 years after 1893. Our kupuna back then were very educated. It's all in the newspapers. What happened between then and now? And there's something that we can now realize. That's why I don't know. Because once you know you don't know, is then you can now know. Let's see. And he goes on to say, Thomas, necessity knows no law. And it was absolutely necessary to annex the islands at the time it was done. Now, mind you, this is the editor of Maui News. Brother's talking like he's from Fox News. And further, Thomas, if it becomes necessary to annex Cuba, it will be done quicker than a wink. It is but fair to give you credit for being honest in your views, Thomas, but you don't quite understand the American people, yet. Hence, you are very misleading. That was a lot of saying a lot of stuff without saying nothing. I'm serious. Just talk. Fill the air with, fill the room with hot air. That's all it is, right? But it kind of intrigues me to think, well, who's this guy, Thomas Clark? Who is this guy? If he doesn't know who the American people are yet, because he's implying, this editor is implying, he's not American. Remember the signature petition, the Kuwait petition? That's Thomas Clark right there, age 42. Wailuku Maui. They all knew. They all knew. Now, what ends up happening is they pass a joint resolution, right? And they enact a law in 1900 called the Organic Act, changing the name of the government of the Hawaiian Kingdom, the infrastructure, to the territory of Hawaii. But that governmental infrastructure is kingdom era. Legislative, executive, judicial. That's my other area of expertise, Hawaiian constitutional law. Now, in order to conceal the American occupation of the Hawaiian Kingdom, the United States deliberately implemented a policy of denationalization through Americanization in 1906. So this is my tutu's generation. Denationalization, by definition under international law, is the obliteration of the national consciousness of the occupied state in the minds of school children. You cannot change the minds of adults, but you can change the minds of children. Okay? Now, in 1919, 1 year after the First World War, the Allied powers concluded that denationalization is a war crime that was committed by Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Bulgaria against the Serbian population during the occupation of the Kingdom of Serbia during World War I. In 1905, the American editor of the Pacific Commercial Advertiser newspaper in Honolulu wrote under the heading, The American Way. By gradually raising the standard of knowledge of English, the high school has so far changed its color that during the past year, 73% were Caucasians. It is not so many years ago that more than 73% were non-Caucasians. At the present rate of progress, he calls that progress, it will not be long before the high school will have its student body as thoroughly Americanized in blood as it long has been in instruction. One great and potent duty of our high schools, public and private, keep in mind this is McKinley High School transforming from Honolulu High School, is to conserve the domination here of Anglo-Saxon ideas and institutions, and this means control by white men. Now, these are some heavy words I'm reading to you, but it's from the history. It's there, okay? Now, in 1906, began a policy of denationalization through Americanization. Its objective was to erase the national consciousness of the Hawaiian Kingdom in the minds of school children and to force them to speak English. If the children spoke Hawaiian, they were severely disciplined. Within 3 generations, denationalization was complete. So that started off with my tutu's generation. By the time I got to my dad's generation, when he's at St. Louis, it's already institutionalized. My mom was at Sacred Hearts. By the time I got to me at Kamehameha schools, out of sight, out of mind. In fact, after high school, I went to a New Mexico Military Institute, get my commission as a 2nd lieutenant, and go play Army like my uncle. But I didn't realize my uncle was drafted, and what that meant, right? Now, Harper's Weekly magazine from New York did a story on this denationalization, right? And it was titled, the article was titled, Hawaii's Lesson to Headstrong California. So here, the reporter takes a photo of 614 school children at Ka'iolani Public School, grades 1 through 8. Okay? And what ends up happening is, after you go to 8th grade, you can't go to high school unless you're white. And that's why my papa started working at 8. A lot of Hawaiians started working after they finished 8th grade. Right? That's why a lot of Hawaiians today don't have degrees. So you can see where that came from. But yet coming from a country that's literacy rate was second to Scotland. You know. So here, at the command of the principal, all the students raised their right hand. It's called the Bethlehem Salute. right? And in unison, they yell, "We give our heads and our hearts to God and our country, one language, one flag." This scene shows a salute to the American flag, which flies in the grounds of the Ka'iolani Public School, which has many Japanese pupils. The drill is constantly held as a means of inculcating patriotism in the hearts of the children. This is where the kidnapping took place by the public institution. Imagine my great-grandfather and great-grandmother couldn't do anything. Their way to respond? Don't talk Hawaiian in front of the kids. Talk on the side, because they're going to get disciplined if they speak it. And the Hawaiian language was the national language. It wasn't the native language. Like speaking Spanish in Spain, right? Or Serbian in Serbia. So the false narrative that concealed 130 years of the American occupation, in 1898, the Hawaiian Islands were incorporated into the territory of the United States. In 1946, the United States reported to the United Nations Secretary General that Hawaii was a colonial possession under its administration since 1898. A colonial possession is a territory that is not a country of their own. Decolonization is when you become a country of your own. And in 1959, the United States reported to the UN Secretary General that the people of Hawaii exercised their right of self-determination and chose to be the 50th state of the United States of America when denationalization was already set. That's what happened. So British novelist Donald James Wheel, also known as Dresden James, he once wrote, "When a well-packaged web of lies has been sold gradually to the masses over generations, the truth will seem utterly preposterous and its speaker a raving lunatic." Did you know people used to think I was a lunatic? Kalavai was trying to poke holes in my lunacy. And then all of a sudden the mirror went up. Oh, I'm the lunatic. I'm just talking straight. Nah. I mean, you got to laugh at this. Because why I laugh? Because it never worked. But what you can do about it is the key. How you going to fix the problem is the key. I'm not into blaming anybody. Everybody say, hey, blame the holy. Blame the holy. I'm part holy. Take it easy, Hawaii. So according to Professor Rim, this is where we're going to bust the myth of annexation. According to Professor Rim, the state continues to exist even in the factual absence of government, so long as the people entitled to reconstruct the government remain. You're talking nationality, not ethnicity. And the word is Hawaiian subject. You can be Chinese or Cantonese, because Chinese is a nationality, because it refers to a geographical location. Cantonese, you can be Irish, right? You can be English. You can also be Hawaiian, whether by naturalization or born on Hawaiian soil. So it's the Hawaiian citizenship is the key as to who can reconstruct the government. Now, from my training in the Army, this would happen to us all the time in a chain of command. The referee in a battle exercise said, okay, 155 howitzer, you guys just got hit with a round. Captain, you're dead, you're dead, you're dead. Quiet. And you got to watch how they assume the chain of command, because you train in that, and they continue on. And that's when a private could become a lieutenant in time of war by necessity. But he's the acting lieutenant. Until a properly commissioned officer comes, he goes back down. Until then, he is vicariously liable, and he has to be that lieutenant, acting lieutenant. We're going to do the same thing. Necessity. On February 28, 1997, Hawaiian subjects exercised their right of internal self-determination and took the necessary steps to restore the Hawaiian Kingdom government as a regency under the doctrine of necessity and Hawaiian constitutional law. A regency serves in the absence of a monarch. A regency is not the monarch, right? So an example would be when King Kalakaua traveled the world in 1881, Lili'uokalani and the Cabinet Council was a regency serving in the absence of Kalakaua. He was still king, right? And that's covered under Article 33 of the Hawaiian Constitution. Addressing over a century of occupation, the Hawaiian Council of Regency was formed similar to the formation of governments in exile during the Second World War. In particular, the Hawaiian Council of Regency was established in similar fashion to the Belgian Council of Regency after King Leopold was captured by the Nazis. As the Belgian Council of Regency was established under Article 82 of its constitution, the Council of Regency was established under Article 33 of its constitution. You gotta have a plan, right? You just don't go, yeah, let's go. First, you got to size up your opponent. And you don't want to walk straight into a straight right. I used to be a boxer, right? So, And if I fight regular, I go, oh, this brother's good. I better go southpaw. Never fight the man's fight. That's what I was taught. 3 phases. Strategic plan. Phase 1, verification of the Hawaiian Kingdom as an independent state and a subject of international law. This is in 1997. This is where a reputable international body must verify the continued existence of the Hawaiian Kingdom as a state, not just me giving a PowerPoint, not with me showing a document. We need to have some international body verify. We didn't know who at that time, but that was crucial. Because once you get verification, then you move to phase 2. Exposure of Hawaiian statehood within the framework of international law and the law of occupation, as it affects the realm of politics and economics at both the international and domestic levels. Phase 2 will focus on individual accountability and compliance to the law of occupation, bringing compliance so that the occupation will eventually come to an end. That's the strategy. And as an Army officer, I created this out of what is called the command estimate process. It has to be broad enough strategically to allow tactical maneuvering, because tactics can change. Strategy cannot, because that's the direction, right? So, phase 1 is crucial. Otherwise, I'm just a lunatic. Phase 1 completed. Permanent Court of Arbitration in the Netherlands verifies the Hawaiian Kingdom. Yep, it continues to exist as a state. The Permanent Court of Arbitration is an intergovernmental organization that creates ad hoc tribunals to resolve international disputes. Because it has to be an international dispute, one of the parties or both parties have to be states. Yeah. Private people can't go to the Permanent Court of Arbitration and resolve a dispute over a contract. But 2 states can go to Permanent Court of Arbitration to resolve a dispute of a treaty, an international contract. Now, the PCA has what is called institutional jurisdiction for the following disputes. So, under the treaty that created the court, which the United States was a part of, this is Hague Convention number 1 in 1899, then later superseded in 1907. They created the Permanent Court of Arbitration as a means to resolve disputes so you don't go to war. But if you can't resolve the dispute, then you have to comply with the rest of the Hague Conventions that regulates the war, okay? So, in order for a dispute to resolve, any country that signed and ratified that treaty has access free of charge because they maintain the court yearly, right? Russia, China, all of Europe, okay? 122 countries today. But if you're a non-contracting state, like the United Nations, membership is 193 right now. That means some of them are not signatories to that treaty. Article 47 of the treaty that formed the court allows access to non-contracting states, but they got to cover the costs, okay? But you got to be a state, whether contracting or non-contracting, because the dispute internationally is when a state is involved. So they have institutional jurisdiction for the following disputes between 2 states. Here we have in Ecuador, 2011, Ecuador versus the United States of America. It's a treaty dispute. And this is from the Permanent Court of Arbitration's case repository. Anybody can access it online. Notice they identify Ecuador as a state, United States as a state. Then they form the tribunal to resolve the dispute. They can also establish a tribunal to resolve a dispute between a state and an international organization. Here we have Peru versus the United Nations. They identify Peru as a state, UN as an international organization. And they can also resolve a dispute by establishing a tribunal between a state and a private party. Larson versus Hawaiian Kingdom. Okay. Here's a case description. Lance Paul Larson, a resident of Hawaii, brought a claim that the Hawaiian Kingdom, by its Consular Regency, on the grounds that the government of the Hawaiian Kingdom is in continual violation of its 1849 Treaty of Friendship, Commerce, and Navigation with the United States, as well as the principles of international law laid down in the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties, the principles of international comity for allowing the unlawful imposition of American laws over him within the territorial jurisdiction of the Hawaiian Kingdom. Now, doesn't that case description speak to a country? And American laws are being imposed over this guy, Lance Larson, who went through an unfair trial and was incarcerated. His attorney is claiming or arguing that the Consular Regency is liable for allowing that American laws to be imposed, which is a violation of the 1849 treaty, because Article 8 of that treaty between the Hawaiian Kingdom and the United States says American law stays in America, Hawaiian law stays in Hawaii. That was the basis of the dispute. But before they can even accept that dispute, they have to verify Hawaiian Kingdom of State, right? There it is, state. 1999. How come nobody knows about this?
No, so how come he was convicted if they're supposed to follow Hawaii law and not American law?
We're gonna get that in class. 'Cause I gotta stick to the myth of annexation. Because this is a very complicated case, because I was actually the lead agent for this case. I led the legal team. So I know exactly what happened up there in The Hague. Okay. So, because we got verification, now we move to exposure. And we're gonna begin that exposure in December of 2000 at the Permanent Court of Arbitration in oral hearings. So now you're gonna see this in action.
The dominion of the Hawaiian Kingdom. In summary, from 1840, the Hawaiian Kingdom possessed a constitutional government with elected and appointed officials and a complete system of civil and criminal laws to govern Hawaiian territory. On April 8, 1842, King Kamehameha III in Privy Council commissions 3 envoys to secure international recognition of Hawaiian independence. And these individuals are Timoteo Ha'alilio, William Richards, and Sir George Simpson. On December 19, 1842, Hawaiian envoys secured United States President Tyler's recognition of Hawaiian independence. November 28, 1843, the British government and the French government formally enter into a declaration recognizing Hawaiian independence. In our pleadings, we refer to that as the 1843 Anglo-Franco Proclamation. From that point, Hawaii has had its statehood recognized as being independent. As such, it began to enter into these treaties: Austria-Hungary, Denmark, France, Germany, Great Britain, Italy, Japan, Netherlands, Russia, Spain, and the United States of America. International recognition is evidence that the Hawaiian Kingdom had diplomatic representatives as of 1893 from those countries, as far as consulates and embassies. Rather, what we find is that the United States has never expressed itself as an occupier. Who would? They will never admit to occupation. But yet, to admit to occupation is, in a sense, to admit to the continued existence of the Hawaiian Kingdom as an independent state, which is really the crux of the matter, which is actually what is holding up, you might say, this issue to be resolved. Thus, the legal order, thus the reestablishment of the government, thus the relationship between its nationals.
I mean, to be slightly unkind, but thus the issue in rem. The point is that if the Hawaiian Kingdom continues to exist, its existence is in rem. It's not in personam. The Hawaiian existence, the Hawaiian Kingdom doesn't exist solely in the opinion of Mr. Larson.
Right. But that existence should not be dependent upon an occupier, because you basically put the occupier on an equal footing with the Hawaiian Kingdom in its own territory. So really what needs to be addressed is what came before the occupation, whether the statehood or whether the legality or illegality of the Hawaiian Kingdom, not the illegality or legality of the United States as an occupier. Should the tribunal find it has jurisdiction, we are prepared to submit an offer of proof. We felt that this tribunal would offer some clarity so that for the first time we have a third party to present these type of merits that can be scrutinized by international law, rather taking it before a United States tribunal, which could not rule on it to the detriment of itself. So in that sense, there is really no other way to address this issue. And the opportunity did arise because it was Mr. Larson who was adhering to Hawaiian Kingdom law. And if the United States was adhering to occupation, not whether they're illegal or illegal, But if they were adhering to the laws of occupation, we wouldn't be here right now.
No, so, okay, so he was using the word in rem and in personam. Those are legal terms. So in rem, meaning it is. Everything is affected by that fact. In personam is according to his opinion. So he was saying, you know, to be slightly unkind, not against me, but to be slightly unkind with Mr. Larson. It's not that you got to keep saying the kingdom exists because that's what you believe. If it exists, it exists. And that's what he's only reiterating what international law says and why the court accepted the case to begin with. But if you notice in my arguments, yeah, you notice how I'm focusing on the state, independence, because I'm dealing with exposure. This is not about Lance Larson, right? He's just a microcosm, and everybody in Hawaii is a Lance Larson. Everybody is subjected to American law, right? But we had to use that opportunity to begin that exposure. So since returning from the Permanent Court of Arbitration in the year 2000, this was after the oral hearings, the Council of Regency addressed the devastating effects of the war crime of denationalization by having me enter the University of Hawaii Political Science Department graduate program to acquire a master's degree and a PhD degree specializing in international relations and law. This is where I'm going to go head on and I'm going to target, right? See, what I have is I got the ace in my pocket. They already verified the Hawaiian Kingdom existence. I just got to explain it to you through to the academy, whether master's thesis, PhD, law journal article, peer review article. In fact, I have a chapter coming out, Oxford University Press in spring. The title of the book is Unconquered States, 9 European Powers in Age of Empire. And I was asked to write the chapter on the Hawaiian Kingdom, and that's coming out. So that's going to hit a broader audience, yeah, and that's Oxford University Press. Now, in 2003, the Hawaiian Society of Law and Politics was established at the University of Hawaii at Manoa that encouraged multidisciplinary research on the subject of the Hawaiian Kingdom and the American occupation. And this is what prompted a plethora of publications. So it's not just me. There's many others, and it's through academic research, analytical rigor, footnotes, definitions, theory, methodology. Yeah. 2017, the Hawaii State Teachers Association, which is an affiliate member of the National Education Association, had a resolution passed at the conference in Boston that stated the NEA will publish an article that documents the illegal overthrow of the Hawaiian monarchy in 1893, the prolonged illegal occupation of the United States in the Hawaiian Kingdom, and the harmful effects that this occupation has had on the Hawaiian people and resources of the land. It passed unanimously. How's that? A lot of these teachers that were delegates to the convention, they all took classes at UH and they were teaching it already in the schools. So they put a resolution together. When they got back home, they contacted me and asked if I could write those articles for them to be published by the NEA. Absolutely. First one, April 2nd, in 2018, the illegal overthrow of the Hawaiian Kingdom government. Remember, the government was overthrown, not the state. Okay, that's important. And then also later, the U.S. occupation of the Hawaiian Kingdom, and there I get into war crimes. And the impact of the U.S. occupation on the Hawaiian people, denationalization, universal health care, right, all these things. And they published it because they couldn't refute it. This is just academic. So it's really, what I saw happening with denationalization in 1906 was weaponizing education for illicit purpose. But it shows you the power of education. We're going to do it the right way. That's how this approach was. Yeah. We're not going to weaponize it. We're going to just use it. Now, the growing body of academic research also garnered attention outside of Hawaii. United Nations Independent Expert, Human Rights Council out of Geneva, the National Lawyers Guild, and two non-government organizations, International Association of Democratic Lawyers and the American Association of Jurists of Latin America, that have observer status with the United Nations Human Rights Council. Okay. So here's a letter that was written in 2018 addressed to members of the State of Hawaii Judiciary from Dr. Alfred Desaias, United Nations Independent Expert, who was appointed as such by the Human Rights Council. So he wrote here, Okay, I have come to understand that the lawful political status of the Hawaiian Islands is that of a sovereign nation state in continuity, but a nation state that is under a strange form of occupation by the United States resulting from an illegal military occupation and a fraudulent annexation. As such, international laws, the Hague and Geneva Conventions require that governance and legal matters within the occupied territory of the Hawaiian Islands must be administered by the application of the laws of the occupied state, in this case, the Hawaiian Kingdom, and not the domestic laws of the occupier, the United States. And I can assure you he didn't take my class. That's all him from Geneva. He's an international law professor. In December of 2019, the membership of the United States National Lawyers Guild, a progressive bar association, adopted this resolution calling upon the United States to begin to comply immediately with international humanitarian law, which is the law of occupation, right, in the Hawaiian Islands. These are all attorneys in America, like, I think, 6,000 members. Yeah. And then in 2020, they send a letter to Governor Ige. Dear Governor Ige, the National Lawyers Guild, the oldest and largest progressive bar association in the United States with 70 chapters and more than 6,000 members, calls upon the state of Hawaii and its county governments as the proxy of the United States, which is in effective control of Hawaiian territory, to immediately comply with international humanitarian law while the United States continues its prolonged and illegal occupation of the Hawaiian Kingdom since 1893. That's heavy.
And what he said.
Well, it doesn't. It doesn't matter what he said. It's what he was told. See, the thing is, okay, the thing about international law and war crimes, you have to be made aware of a situation before you can be held accountable. If you didn't know, then you're not criminally liable. That's why you notice they're trying to find Trump. Did he really know what he did, or did he just say, oh, I was told this? I was ignorant. That's not a crime. Maybe stupid, but that's not a crime, right? War crimes. You now know. If you are aware that Hawaii's occupied, you're tagged. So what you're seeing here, coming from an attorneys group, they're setting up people to make sure you're on the right side of history and not on the wrong side. But that's strictly attorney approach, right? Now, the International Association of Democratic Lawyers adopted a resolution on February 7, 2021, just 2 years ago, calling upon the United States immediately to comply with international humanitarian law and its prolonged occupation of the Hawaiian Islands, the Hawaiian Kingdom. And it also covers war crimes being committed. Okay? Because the imposition of American law is a war crime. It's called usurpation of sovereignty. That's what Germany did to Luxembourg during World War II. They get Nuremberg trials, right? So these are very serious issues. So when you speak of Hawaii as a country, everything comes into play. That applies to other countries as well, being occupied. On February 16, 2022, the International Association of Democratic Lawyers and the American Association of Jurists of Latin America sent a joint letter to all members of the United Nations General Assembly in New York City and Geneva, drawing attention to the American occupation. And that's the letter. See, what is happening here is how you deal with busting the myth is exposure. This is, to me, this is part of phase 2. You educate. You get people made aware. See, that's what's important. You're not saying make a decision, just be aware, right? Now, on February 22nd, 2022, the IADL and the AAJ, American Association of Jurists, registered with the UN Human Rights Council to deliver an oral statement on the human rights violations that are currently taking place as a result of the American occupation. And they asked me to give that oral statement to the Human Rights Council in Geneva, Switzerland.
Thank you, and I now give the floor to International Association for Democratic Lawyers.
The International Association of Democratic Lawyers and the American Association of Jurists call the attention of the Council to human rights violations in the Hawaiian Islands. My name is Dr. David Keanu, and I am the Minister of Foreign Affairs ad interim for the Hawaiian Kingdom. I also served as lead agent for the Hawaiian Kingdom at the Permanent Court of Arbitration from 1999 to 2001, where the court acknowledged the continued existence of my country as a sovereign and independent state. The Hawaiian Kingdom was invaded by the United States on 16 January 1893, which began its century-long occupation to serve its military interests. Currently, there are 118 military sites throughout the islands, and the city of Honolulu serves as the headquarters for the Indo-Pacific Combatant Command. For the past century, the United States has and continues to commit the war crime of usurpation of sovereignty under customary international law by imposing its municipal laws over Hawaiian territory, which has denied Hawaiian subjects their right of internal self-determination by prohibiting them to freely access their own laws and administrative policies, which has led to the violations of their human rights, starting with the right to health, education, and to choose their political leadership. So all the members in this session included the United States. And I asked the what we call the I believe it's Special Rapporteur for the International Association of Democratic Lawyers assigned, and I said, what was the reaction? They didn't know. Was there anything stated by the United States? Nothing. That is significant because under international law, that's called acquiescence. Acquiescence is approval. That's why even in the tragedy of the Ukraine-Russia war, whenever they make allegations of Russian war crimes, you always see Russia come out and say no. See, because if you don't say no, you acknowledge it could be used later against you at the international level. Acquiescence is a major rule that is a part of the international law, right? So what you have here is everybody's getting caught. I didn't know, right? But now we're going to start to move toward how you fix the problem. So there are ways to fix the problem, which is laid out in the law of occupation. Oh yeah, it's all there, right? But it first begins with education. So in my class, I actually get into the details of how does that take place. But what I'm here to do is I'm busting the myth of annexation, right? That Hawaii was never part of the United States. Now, as a former army officer, it's not a political statement. That's just a statement of fact. It's not America, right? So these are the legal aspects. Now, just this past September, these legal issues have been taken up by a Swiss law firm in Zurich, Switzerland. Yeah. There is a Hawaiian Soccer Federation called Hawaiian Football Federation, based and headquartered out of Maui. They've been educated, like all you folks, while the Hawaiian Kingdom still existing. They applied to participate in the World Cup. They applied to FIFA. How's that? So when they applied to FIFA, which is in Zurich, right? They provided all the information that you folks have seen. A lot of our work here at the university, our published law journal articles, the Permanent Court of Arbitration's case repository, here it says state. Because according to FIFA, the country has to be operating as a soccer federation within an independent state to be eligible for membership. So when it was submitted, it was denied because the response they got was, you guys are part of the United States, but when you become your own country, you can put your application in. When I read this person's application, because he contacted me, his name is Vernon Kapuala, he's the president of this association, and I went, first of all, it is very impressive the way you put this application together, you and your wife. Found out his wife is really akamai, right? She just finishing off her PhD out of USC. And I'm like, very impressive. And then I said, you know what? There's somebody I know. See, I know people, right? I know a lawyer from Switzerland, from a very reputable law firm. Her name is Dr. Natalie Peter. Yeah. So what I did was I just kind of hooked them up, right? And just last year, they filed an application letter. And they reiterated everything. And they zero in on, is the Hawaiian Kingdom a state? Larson versus Hawaiian Kingdom. These are legal people coming in, right? My best part of this letter, right here. Ongoing academic research. Over the last 2 decades, facts about Hawaii's legal status as an independent state under prolonged occupation have been uncovered by academics in the fields of political science and international law. These findings have been published in international law journals, peer and law-reviewed articles, and university curriculum. Yes, Switzerland is talking to FIFA about these guys over here. because it's a country. So you can see this is just, it's beyond just what is being taught in class, but where you take it. And that's what's important, right? So, in conclusion, phase 2 continues. Exposure of the Hawaiian Kingdom as an occupied state. Mahalo. So any questions? So as far as the FIFA application, it's good to know, but it's under the radar per se. This is not where they're drawing attention, right? So this is just for you folks to know the reaches of this information and education. It's not just here. It's not just so parochial. Did you know Hawaii has a treaty with Switzerland? Yeah, they have a treaty. The treaty with Germany, Russia. Those treaties still exist. Well, any questions?
Yeah, go ahead. No, how come they didn't help us then?
Well, other countries, the United States was actually flexing its power at that time. And World War II pretty much locked it in because they saved Europe when they came into World War I. And then World War II, and then Cold War, which only allowed time for the United States here to continue the denationalization where it became institutionalized. And pretty soon, nobody knew. So by the time you get to the United Nations in 1946, they didn't know either, right?
So, on top of your slide had that we get one treaty with the United States too, yeah?
Yeah,
The
treaty
Hawaiian
still exists,
Kingdom,
yeah.
So how, I don't understand that, like how we get one treaty with you and then you do what you did to us?
So what was driving the United States to do what they did to the Hawaiian Kingdom was military. It was military. It wasn't to brainwash everybody. It was to establish a military base strategically.
But they could have done that with us being the neutral.
No, they couldn't.
No.
As a neutral country, you can't have a military bases in your territory.
No, like they could have used us just for do whatever and then go, right?
No. It's a neutral state. You can't do that, right? You need the consent. Now, the Hawaiian Kingdom could negate its status as a neutral state by doing that, but it wouldn't. It would open a door for a lot of problems, right? So what basically happened was you have the initial violation of international law, setting up military bases here. How do you hide the illegality? Denationalization started in the schools. So that became more of an approach to conceal and not necessarily the goal. It was an approach to conceal the occupation, which today we are living through the hardest aspect of, oh my God, which pill do I take, the red or the blue pill? Yes, that goes to the Matrix movie. Yes.
You worked with the grad program for the education,
The grant program.
for graduate education.
So I'm also an affiliate
Yeah.
faculty member at the College of Education at UH Manoa graduate program. So when teachers are coming back to school, getting their masters or their PhDs, they get to take one of my classes called Introduction to the Hawaiian State.
Yeah. So what kind of policies do we still have in place that continue to perpetuate these kinds of denationalization?
So the one thing is U.S. history should not be taught, but rather should be included in world history, because that's what it was in the Kingdom era. So you can actually see the curriculum in Lahaina Luna had their exams in 1882. Boy, it was unreal. I mean, I can't even pass this test. These were all the exams. And, it covered all the maths, trigonometry, geometry, algebra, right? You had to take it. They also taught political economy. And it was all in English because high school, which is college level, the medium was English immersion. So like Kamehameha schools is secondary, English immersion it was. But Lahaina Luna, in these exams that I use in my class, so Kanane, you're gonna see one of these exams, right? What I appreciate, their final question was their essay. Do you wanna be in business or do you wanna serve in government? That gives you an idea of the direction of education. Government service, business, right? And that was cool because they were looking at it, coming at it from a country standpoint, a country, right, that has its own economy, right? Those are the kind of things that still need to be the subject of doctoral dissertations and research and master's thesis. So I encourage additional research. Right now, I sit on a doctoral committee, Nalini Bolutsky, College of Ed, and she's covering the how education, how it took place in the Kingdom era, its organization, its structure, mind-blowing. The Hawaiian Kingdom had a student abroad program. Yeah, 1880s on the Kalakaua. Send men and women, abroad, get educated, come back. Powerful stuff. Got to see what classes they were taking. Medical doctor, yeah, military. That's college. Yeah. So like my favorite guy that was part of that student abroad program was Willie Koki, Robert Wilcox. He was sent to Italy, the military academy. There he got commissioned as an officer, field artillery. If you look on his hat that he has, cross cannons. I'm cross cannons. So when I was invited to give a guest lecture at the University of Torino, right? Torino is where, or they say Turin in English. Torino is where that academy is at, and it's still there. So one of the doctoral students set up a visit for me. So I went and they showed me the records of Wilcox, and I was like, wow. And you know what? He was speaking Italian. He wasn't speaking Hawaiian or English. And all these students abroad were speaking the language of Japan, right? Chinese, yeah? So Wilcox, I'm looking, wow, he's acing everything. So I'm asking the cadre there, are you guys still teaching and training like how you did back then? And he says, yeah. And he started to explain, it was just like my training at New Mexico Military Institute and also field artillery branch qualification. That's why I have a link to Wilcox, the king of battle, red legs. So it's pretty cool. But when you start to see people from Hawaii abroad, wow, amazing. Yes.
The effectiveness of denationalization here in Hawaii. What, if anything, at the moment, is it this? Is it just exposure? How do you undo denationalization, obviously through that, but their focus was the schools, the children. Are we there yet?
So from an Army standpoint, because this is a military occupation, it's still military, right? This is not civilian occupation. It's just we've been led to believe something that's not true. There are certain rules that require change from the top down, centralized control. It's called a military government. And a military government, stemming from U.S. Army Field Manual 27-5 and 27-10, takes over civilian government, but merely replaces the head with a military governor, not a civilian governor, and everybody stays in place. It's just under a different direction. That's exactly what happened in Iraq, during the Spanish-American War, during the Mexican-American War, to continue to administer the laws of the occupied state until a treaty of peace is negotiated. In this case, not to transfer territory, but to bring the occupation to an end. I can tell you that we're in talks with senior leadership of the state of Hawaii right now on that. They see it. Why do they see it? Not because they choose to see it, war crimes. Because if you don't do it when you are aware, that is a war crime by omission, not commission. And that's why the war crimes, which didn't exist in 1893, it only came about after World War I and fully developed after World War II. It wasn't there in 1893. So our queen and our people didn't have leverage that could be used when in the absence of physical power. We now have it. But we have to be careful how you wield it, because this is not about hitting people on the head. You have to give them the benefit of the doubt. You don't know, don't act like you know. What I like to say is don't play dantaran. You guys know where dantaran came from, huh? It's not Filipino. Dinaguan. You guys know where dantaran is? A local slang. Hey, don't play dantaran. That's from the old Superman movie. Dantaran. That's where it came from. So I would tell people, don't play dantaran. Just, it's all good. Let's work together to get this thing moving. But you gotta be educated. You gotta know what's going on.
So is there a plan to introduce all of this, what we're learning now, into the school systems? Is that what you say?
It has to start from the top with a policy change. But in the absence of that, teachers on their own are doing it. And what they can rely on, NEA already has those articles. They're relying on information. So teachers that have taken our classes are teaching it in the schools, and that's how it should be. And I caution everyone, don't politicize the history, just teach it. If anything, encourage critical thinking. Critical thinking is not being a critic. That's just being a wise ass. Critical thinking is asking the right questions. That's the key. We want to increase comprehension because education is so important across the board. This is not a native issue, right? And Hawaiian nationality is not ethnic. It's a nationality, okay? So also people who are not Hawaiian subjects in the Hawaiian Kingdom, they also have rights too. All of that is according to Hawaiian law. It's all there. Yeah, that's how it is. But people tend to think that, oh, this is about the sovereignty movement. No, it's not about the sovereignty movement. The difference between the sovereignty movement and what you folks have learned here is that this is talking about sovereignty already in a country. It's just not being exercised correctly. Sovereignty movement is assuming there is no sovereignty. What was overthrown in 1893 is gone. We're part of the United States and we want to break away. And every group has a view of how to break away. And that's why it's called an independence or sovereignty movement, which is more aspirational, right? And some want to stay in. Well, you can't divorce if you was never married. And I, for one, would never be a part of secession from the United States because I was in the Army. No. I don't play that game. That's treason. So I have to make sure I know I'm not committing treason because we're not in the United States. That's the key, right? So when we start to teach this, encourage critical thinking, but terminology is so important that informs the comprehension aspect of it, and that's what's important. Yes, Auntie?
So this exposure has been, current, being exposed, you went to the peer review articles, the school, the teaching. Now, how long is that before we can move into the next phase, or like demilitarize the, the occupation?
Okay, so the first thing is, so I also paddled the Molokai Channel. I'm going to use this as a metaphor. Okay, so imagine nobody knows how canoe paddling is long distance and how the changes work, right? 9-member crew, jump out, jump in, but still flying. It takes time to learn all of that, right? But the Molokai Channel is now you're in the canoe and you're racing. Anybody here want to jump in the canoe? Education finds those people. They find it in their background, legal guys. Yeah? Like the International Association of Democratic Lawyers, they jumped in a canoe. Permanent Court of Arbitration jumped in a canoe. So there are a lot of people jumping in the canoe, but they do what they do because that's what they know. This is not about buying into the Hawaiian Kingdom's existence. It's like trying to buy into the United States' existence. The United States exists. It's a country. Hawaiian Kingdom exists. It's a country, right? But there's a lot of things that I do in the academy, and I sit on doctoral committees as well. But there's other things that I also do because I'm still a member of the Council of Regency, and we've been having negotiations already, and that's where it goes. So I kind of wear different hats, and I'm still a grandfather, right? I'm a husband, so I get about 10 hats I got to wear. So I'm like, oh, make sure I got the right hat on. But as a faculty member at the University of Hawaii, I take my responsibility of education very seriously, because that is the future, right? That is the future. And anybody taking my class, they'll realize they're not joining anything. They're just becoming more aware. And that's all it is. I said, hey, right on. Go write an article. Start doing something with the academy. Yes. Hey, how are you?
Two things. I was in the 5th grade at Kamehameha when statehood occurred. And that was Everybody was jumping for joy. People coming out of the classrooms like crazy. People were so happy. And at the same time on the streets, the kupuna were crying. Okay, so that's one picture. To address what Kumu just said now, I was involved in Protect Ho'olauleopana, where young people said, enough is enough. You guys are going to stop the bombing on Kaho'olawe, Pauare. That poor island has had it. No more bombs on that island. 2 men gave up their lives because of what happened there. George Helm and Uncle Harry Mitchell's son, Keanu. So realize that this isn't always going to be done in places like the halls of, it's a good word, cool. The halls of government, the halls of universities. It takes people to have guts and to say, enough is enough. That's all I have to say.
No, so before I got before I got into the University of Hawaii, that was part of our plan. That's why, to get qualified in the PhD program and the master's program. I intentionally selected professors on my doctoral committee who I knew wouldn't agree with me that Hawaii's occupied. How was that? I made sure that it's against their interests to actually say the Hawaiian Kingdom is occupied. But see, I want them to find holes in my work, right? Because that's how the academy works. So I had the dean of the law school, Aviam Soifer. His LLM was U.S. constitutional law. He might find something that I couldn't see. I had the University of London, dean of University of London Law School, Matthew Craven, law, international law and state sovereignty. I had Neil Milner. He's a political pundit still on Channel 4 News. He was my chair. Then I had 3 other political science professors, and I had John Osora as one of my members. And I can tell you that when I met up with John before my defense, I said, John, you have any questions regarding my dissertation? And he goes, Keanu, everything in your dissertation, you just took out everything we teach at UH. No, that's what he told me. I said, well, that wasn't my intent. My intent was to successfully defend my dissertation. But hey, that's a consequence, right? So people know, but do people do? Because you know what? They still teaching a false history. And this is coming out of Hawaiian Studies, political science, University of Hawaii. You know, so there is that problem there, but it is still a part of exposure. Accountability is going to be a part of it. Now, one thing I wanted to mention before I entered the University of Hawaii, we were showing that land titles were defective because in 1893, this is from 1995 to 1998. In 1893, the overthrow of the Hawaiian government, all land titles today originated 1845. Everything goes back to a royal patent or a land commission award, right? It's on your tax map key. Okay, you can see it. No title can be transferred after 1893 because remember, the overthrows happen. Who's the notary after January 17, 1893 on that deed? It's an insurgent, provisional government. That's a defect in title, everything stopped. That means title could not transfer. Well, people might go, what do I do? They didn't know they have title insurance that they bought in escrow. The loan that money they borrowed, there's actually a lender's policy because the bank requires you to buy the lender's policy to protect the bank in the amount of the money owed to the bank in case there's a defect in the title. That's what the insurance is for. Boy, did that create a ruckus back in 1997. And who was screaming and yelling? Title companies. Yeah. Then the title companies got the state of Hawaii, which I know for a fact, to attack us. Our offices were raided in 1997 on Richard Street by the Honolulu Police Department White Collar Crime Unit. Get arrested for racketeering, money laundering, tax evasion. You know what that showed me? It's real. You don't react that way on frivolous issues. But for me, okay, here we go. Okay, first thing, I was married already. I had 2 kids. Okay, take my ring off. Nobody gonna know who my family is. I'm looking at the safety of my kids. Bring it on. That was me. That's my Army training, right? So as education and part of this exposure took place, see, before people go, hey, you Keanu Sai. Oh, bro, what is that, good or bad? What you reading? Then I go, no. Yeah, I took it, hey, right on. Today, Dr. Sai, I do selfies all the time when I'm coming through the airport and at the grocery store. It's such a change. But the importance is, don't get angry. See, because in the Army, you don't get angry. You just get more calculated. Go and get more intel. Let me size you up, right? Because I got to do a, counterattack or something. So that's really who I am, right? So I have that type of ano, right? But it's important, though, to make sure that you're even keeled on things, because I don't promote anger, because anger is a reflection of not knowing something. So there's a olelo no'eo, right? Refers to the kahuivai, the water gourd, right? So the water gourd represents a person, and water in the gourd represents knowledge. The gourd with a little bit of water makes the most noise when you shake it. So when you hear a lot of swishing, get more water. Fill the gourd. That's why education is important, right? So that I kind of want to bring that to a close because I went over 15 minutes. Who do I have to apologize? Colette? No, me, sorry. So 15 minutes. But we can talk after. I just wanted to formally bring it to a close because it was supposed to end 15 minutes ago. Mahalo, everybody, for attending.